Yo, what is up, guys? It's Pedro here, and we got a special guest, Tyler, aka, or formerly known as Bentley Haskins on Twitter. Make sure you guys check him out. His link is in the description. Great follow on Twitter for the Washington football team. We're just going to be talking about, free agency, the draft today, some of our favorite prospects, what we want to do at 19. There's been a lot of debate. Do we want to go quarterback, receiver, or go at a different at a different position, and we'll just let you guys ask some questions too. So, Tyler, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, my name's Tyler. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm a huge, Washington football team fan. Formerly known as something else, but so I've got this Twitter account, and I was kind of looking for a way to get more involved with other fans because since I'm in Nashville, there's not really Washington fans around here. So I joined this Twitter and kind of followed some of those main pages like JP Finley and got some of those beat reporters. And probably like 2 or 3 years ago, I just kind of went through some of their followers and noticed like that this Washington football team Twitter network of people, that always talk about football and like free agency and the draft was just kind of sitting there, and I'd never kind of tapped into that. So I started to follow some accounts and, it was just so much fun talking, football with people and other fans, like 24/7. And, I guess it's almost been, I think it's been 3 years now or 2 years now, ever since I started that. And, I've met so many cool people on the site, and it's just a great, great way to spend my free time is looking at this Twitter. So
Yeah, it's fun and frustrating too sometimes. You almost have 5K, not subscribers,
Mhm.
followers. So make sure you guys go ahead and follow him on Twitter. Great follow. It's in the description. So let's first talk about some guys. Like, who do you want to resign on the Washington football team right now? Like, who do you think should be our main priority, and what guys you think you would probably let go?
um, obviously Brandon Sheriff, the right guard, he's got to be one of the priorities. He's only 29 years old, I think, or maybe no, I think he's like maybe 31 or 32. But he's a great right guard. He's an All Pro, this year. And our offensive line kind of looked, the best it's ever been, or at least recently this year. And I think keeping Sheriff is definitely a huge priority. And I think from other reports that I've seen from guys like Kime and JP Finley, like reiterate that that's kind of a priority for the team too. So that's good to hear. Another controversial one is Ronald Darby. There's a lot of fans that have mentioned they don't want to re-sign Darby, or they should let him walk or whatever because we have some money tied up in Kendall Fuller. And I actually want to re-sign Darby. I think he played really well. And I was actually nervous when we signed him from Philadelphia. Some of those highlights, against Ronald Darby were pretty worrisome, but he played really, really well this year. And I feel like we spent so much time saying that cornerback was a need, over the last 2 to 3 years. And I think we did a good job of getting him and kind of plugging him into a system that worked for him, whether that was Jack Del Rio or Rivera, but he just kind of works in that system. And another one I want to re-sign is KPL, Kevin Pierre-Louis. I think he was a good linebacker addition this year, and he had some shaky games, especially like one game that comes to my mind is week 1 against the Eagles. When the Eagles went up 17-0, a couple of those touchdowns to the tight ends were against KPL, and everybody was dogging him on Twitter and saying how trash he was, but he ended up playing really well. And I think PFF actually graded him as a top 5 coverage linebacker this year, after 16 games. So those are the 3 that I'm kind of thinking of. What about you?
Yeah, like I agree with most of those. And one thing that's really interesting, like you brought up, like the secondary is one of our like biggest holes, I would say, like before the season started. I would say cornerback, we were really concerned with that. We were concerned with offensive line and tight end. And I think all 3 of those positions, played a lot better than we thought they would, especially tight end. I mean, we need to address that backup spot, but Logan Thomas played really well this season, and offensive line played pretty well as well. And yeah, I think Brandon Sheriff got to re-sign him. I think it would be a little weird to not re-sign him. I think he's like good for the culture, and he's one of the best guards in football. You bring him back, Darby. I think Darby would be like I want to bring him back. I don't think he's a number one corner, but he's a really good number two, and he's still really young. I think he's 26 years old, so I think you bring him back, and I think KPL would be a solid one too. We don't have really any great linebacker depth besides Cole Holcomb, and we have Bosick, but he hasn't really played that well. So I agree with those, and I think if you can get Cam Sims for pretty cheap, I would bring him back as a rotational receiver. He had like 477 yards this year, and he really only started getting some playing time like on offense in like week 5, week 6. So I think as your fourth or fifth receiver in the rotation, I think that would be a solid signing. And then I think, re-sign or sign Kyle Allen super cheap. I think you can get him for like 850K, and there's really no risk with that. So yeah, those are kind of my guys I want to bring back. Like you said, I agreed with all those guys, and then maybe Cam Sims and Kyle Allen as well. So what are some under the radar positions that you think we need to address this offseason?
Um, I guess I'll kind of start with like some on the radar positions. We talked about how wide receiver two, linebacker, tight end, and then obviously free safety was another one that was kind of hitting on Twitter of people throughout the season. Those are kind of like the main ones that come to my mind, and maybe some under the radar stuff would be like an RB2. We saw when Antonio Gibson went down towards the latter half of the season. J.D. McKissick did a great job of kind of stepping in and filling in that role, especially with his targets, in the receiving game. But I think, a running back that could, stay in between the tackles for 90% of the snaps, kind of like Peyton Barber. But, Peyton Barber, I'd like to see a little bit more explosion out of that RB2. So I could see, them getting like a running back in the, fourth or fifth or sixth rounds to kind of plug in that area. And I don't know. What do you think about free safety? So I know Jeremy Reeves, he kind of came on later. He's a good hitter. I think, Troy Apke started the first half of the season, and then it was Reeves in the second half of the season. But when you look up his coverage stats, he was targeted 10 times and allowed, 7 catches. So I think that's definitely an area that he could improve in coverage. But he's a hard hitter. He sets the tone in that sense. That's kind of what, we thought Lennon Collins was going to be, even though he's that strong safety. And then Cam Curl came in, and I don't know. I'm interested to see if they like that back end, safety position, or if they'd want to attack it with something else this offseason. So
Yeah, I think free safety for me, I would be fine with bringing back who we have, but I also would be open to, if someone like Richie Grant is there in the second, wherever he's going, I think that could be someone you go after. Yeah, maybe like that third round. We have 2 third-round picks. That's a good round to get your starters in. I think safety definitely is a position we could address, especially since DeShazer Everett is probably not, we already saw in the first season he got hurt. I mean, after a few starts, he had that shoulder injury, and I think he had an ankle one as well. So he plays really like physical. He's probably not going to be super healthy, and you really don't know what you have in Jeremy Reeves. So I think you should probably bring in a guy. But I don't really agree with the people saying go get Justin Simmons. I love Justin Simmons, but you can't be paying 30 mil a year to you Justin Simmons, and then Landon Collins, we don't even know if he's going to be starting. So that's where I'm at with free safety. And real quick, let me say hi to some people in the chat. What's up, James? What's up, Philip B? What's up on the Warpath? Make sure you guys check out his channel. What's up, Christian? What's up, Blue Jay? What's up, everyone in the chat? Yeah, someone said Andre Cisco from Syracuse. So yeah, there's some options in free agency and in the draft. Some other under the radar positions, I think punt returner and kick returner is something we have to upgrade. I mean, it was just terrible this year. Kick returner, it wasn't awful. It just, Danny Johnson didn't really return it that much. When he did, he would get out to, 25, 27-yard line, but he maybe returned it one time per game. And then Steven Sims was just awful. Him and Isaiah Wright. That's like, it was fun. I was talking about this in another stream, but like, there was like things in the season that you would be super nervous about, and it changed from week 1 to week 17. The first few weeks were like Haskins, come on, you got to ball out. Like every time he drops back, you're like, please don't turn the ball over. And then after he gets benched, it's like it turns into Dustin Hopkins. Please make this kick. And then the last 4 weeks of the season with Steven Sims, please don't fumble the ball. Especially, I think our offense is going to take another step, but it's still not going to be one of the better offenses in the NFL unless we somehow get one of these premier quarterbacks. So getting that spark out of your punt return and kick returner game is definitely essential. And I'm not saying necessarily you go get a guy in free agency or in the draft just to be a punt returner, kick returner. But if you can get someone like, let's say, Desmond King, who can be a solid corner, maybe a safety, and can be a punt returner or kick returner, I think that would be a good idea. What do you think about that? And what's up, Scotty?
Desmond King, I think he would be a great addition, because he can play that slot corner role too, and return some punts and kicks. I think that would allow Kendall Fuller to kind of stay on the outside more, and maybe put him in those safety packages. And like you said, Ronald Darby is more of like a CB2. So I think adding that extra piece with Jimmy Moreland and all those other guys in the back would be great, because like you said, it seemed like every 4 weeks there was something new to worry about, and ended up working on the end, and we won the division, but there's still so much to be desired from this team, and so many of our mistakes and some games we even lost were from special teams, like those missed kicks from Hopkins, or the fumble, drop fumbles for touchdowns and things like that. Just mental mistakes that you have to be better at as a team. You just have to, fair catch it. And it seems easy to us that aren't playing, but I know it's not easy. But we got to get somebody in who can return punts and kicks and things like that. Another thing I was going to ask you about with free agency, what do you think about a Jonathan Allen extension this summer? So that's something that people have kind of been already mentioning, because I think they're scared to let him hit free agency, next year if a deal doesn't get done. And if we have some of that extra cap right now, maybe this could be an opportunity to get something done before his value skyrockets next year.
Yeah, the whole D line is just tough because, it's going to be really hard to pay him. And I think I don't know what the guy's name on Twitter is, but he's like one of the lead cap guys for like the NFL, something over the cap. And he was like, go ahead and ask questions. And I was like, what do you think a Jonathan Allen deal looks like? And he said 18 mil plus per year. And that is that's a lot of money. And we'll see how much the cap goes up and how high that really is, because 18 mil per year in 4 years could be a lot less than it actually is. But regardless, 18 mil is a lot, and it really just depends on who you want to keep on that D line. You're assuming you want to keep Chase and Montez. Definitely Chase Young. There's no way Chase Young leaves here unless the relationship somehow gets fractured. But then after that, it's like I saw John Kimes' article a week ago, and he said a lot of league sources are telling him if you pay Allen and Payne, then you're not going to be able to pay both edge rushers. So I personally think you got to keep Sweat and you got to keep Chase. After that, it's tough. I definitely agree with the people that say, Allen is good for the culture. He's one of the leaders on the defense, and you don't want to lose him. And I agree, you don't want to lose him, but I personally rather keep Deron Payne, but I think they're going to keep Jonathan. I think they're going to pay him. I think they're going to pay him, 15, 17 mil a year, around that range, just because, he's good for the culture. But I would argue that I think Chase Young is he was already probably one of our biggest leaders on the defense in his rookie year. I think he can take over that role if Allen leaves. But what I don't want to happen at all is you can't let them go for nothing. Do what the 49ers did. That's the perfect example. Trade them away before you got to give them the extension. They got a first-round pick and replaced DeForest Buckner with Javon Kinlaw, who has been a beast. And, maybe they traded away the wrong guy in DeForest Buckner, but they got a first-round pick out of that. And if we can't pay all these guys, we got to make sure we maximize the value.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, one of the reasons I brought up John Allen is because so many people have like fallen in love with him as the leader of the defense, and we see him in post-game interviews talking about the culture and like when we lose games, how professional he is. And um, I kind of agree. I think they're going to keep John Allen, over Deron Payne, because I think Deron Payne is his upside is probably higher. He's younger, and like he's just a menace in the middle. Like, he spent a full year as a 3-4 nose tackle, just eating up double teams, and then, this year he kind of got to go in the 4-3, and he looked, really good. And I think it's just that consistency thing from them, like getting that same production on a week-to-week basis. But I think if you look at, so Chase Young is on a rookie deal, Montez Sweat is on a rookie deal, and they're going to be kind of locked up for the next, 4 to 5 years, both of them combined. So I think because John Allen is that first guy on the defensive line that's coming up for a contract extension, I think he's the one that's going to get it. And then I think it's definitely a priority to keep Montez and Chase Young. So I think they're going to get paid. So I think just like years wise, and I think it just kind of leaves, Deron Payne out of that mix. And like you said, I wouldn't love to trade him, but if you look at what the Colts did, they got DeForest Buckner, and he was a beast for them too this year. So it was kind of a win-win for both the 49ers and the Colts. I'd like to see that happen with, either Allen or Deron Payne. But it also increases the urgency for us to win now. Like, we use that term win now all the time, but I want to maximize this defensive line, as best we can. And that's only going to happen, over the next like 2 to 3 years before somebody eventually is gone.
Yeah, and we also have Matt Ioannidis, so it's going to be, especially, I feel like our D line is so good that you almost like, you could trade, like, I'm not saying Allen or Payne, but like, you have Settle and Ioannidis who no doubt could be starters on other teams, and they're going to be coming in, off the rotation. They're still going to get some like good playing time, but you're kind of wasting some snaps where you could get some trade value. I think Tim Settle is a free agent after this next season, so maybe you could get something from. I love him, but you got to make sure you maximize the value. And I agree. A lot of people in the chat are saying, someone said Allen is worth more. He's a motivational guy. Let's see. Trade Jonathan Allen. We can get a second or a third. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the trade value is for both those guys. Allen had a really good year. He had a really good year. The stats didn't necessarily show that, but he was fourth in the run game and got some pressure. So, either way, we're going to have a really good defensive line. It's going to come down to who the coaches like more, obviously. So now transitioning into wide receivers. So if you look at our wide receivers on the roster right now, give me your prediction on how many or which ones will be on the 53-man roster when the season starts. Let's say, assuming we keep 6 total receivers.
Mm-hmm. So 6 total receivers. Obviously you got to put Terry in there. I don't know after that, we got Terry, and I don't know. Do they keep Steven Sims? Do they keep Isaiah Wright? Do they keep Cam Sims? Like those are 3 guys right off the bat that are gone. Is Kelvin Harmon going to come back, 100%? I think Kelvin Harmon will be on the roster. Who are the other receivers? I'm just kind of AGG. If he has a bad training camp, I don't know. He's a rookie, so I think he'll be on the roster though because of, they drafted him. So I think he'll make the roster. So Terry, and then AGG, then you got Harmon. That's 3. You got to think they're going to add a wide receiver in free agency or the draft, pretty early on. So they'll be on the team. I think they keep Steven Sims because what else do they have right now? He's their slot guy, and regardless of whether or not they upgrade that position, he'll be a good backup slot, or they can help develop him because he has skill. Maybe it's just some of those hands that are giving him issues. Like maybe he hits the jug machine, relentlessly this summer to kind of improve that. Like we talked about, with Terry, that's what he did before coming to Ohio State. Urban Meyer said that he had like terrible hands. And so that, that's kind of an area of strength for him. So Terry, AGG, Harmon, Steven Sims, a free agent or young guy, and I don't know. What do you think? Can you think of the other six
Oh
person?
yeah, it's tough. I would say so. Obviously, Terry's gonna make the roster. I think AGG. I wouldn't say he's a lock, but I think that just because he's a fourth round pick, you know, didn't get into any trouble this past season. I mean, really, he had no off season. He had no rookie minicamp, no OTAs. He had didn't have a training camp because he had a concussion, and then played a few weeks, and then had his hamstring injury, so he really did not have a season at all. So I think he's going to make the roster. I think so. That's Terry. I think Kelvin Harmon makes it. I think that AGG makes it. And then what's up, Wongati? He said Cam Sims. And I think Cam Sims could definitely be a guy that makes the roster. That's at four. You're at four receivers right there. And I think no doubt they're going to sign a guy in free agency. Like, there's no way they don't. So that puts you at five right there. And I mean, this receiver class is super, super deep. So I think you go right there and get six. So, I mean, I think if they can get Cam Sims for cheap, I think he's back, and probably Steven Sims is on the outside looking in. But if they can't get Cam Sims, or let's say they can't get Curtis Samuel, who's probably going to be our slot guy, then they're going to probably stick with Steven Sims because they're probably not going to have anyone else to go after. What's up, Christian? What's up? Obviously, Wangati, Protect Sports. Make sure you guys check out Protect Sports and Wangati. So, yeah, this wide receiver is probably one of the biggest question marks this offseason because we already know our number one wide receiver. It's going to be who's our number two. What do you think in terms of are you in the mindset of going after a big name wide receiver, like let's say Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, Kenny Galladay, or would you rather go into that second tier, maybe Corey Davis, Curtis Samuel, kind of those type of receivers?
Um, I'd love to have Allen Robinson, or Chris Godwin or Kenny Galladay if they hit free agency, and that kind of depends on if they're tagged or not. I think those guys are going to be tagged, and the one I think makes it to free agency is maybe Allen Robinson because I think the Bears are in some tough cap situations. I think he's going to want to go to like a contender right away, and I mean money talks, so it's all up in the air. And with with the salary cap situations right now, there's not going to be a lot of teams that are even going to be able to afford to offer Allen Robinson what he's looking for. At like 18 million a year, 20 million a year, kind of what Amari Cooper got last year. Like right off the top of my head, the Colts scream out as like the perfect spot right now for Allen Robinson because they have a dome. They just got Carson Wentz. He's like a decent quarterback. He can make some plays, and they have a ton of cap space, and they're like ready to win now. I think Allen Robinson will like to go there, but I'm definitely in the camp of like going to that second tier because I think Terry is a one, or at least a 1A, like a very strong 2 on his bad days. So I would rather pay like a slot guy like Samuel, if that makes sense for the team. But I really like Corey Davis too. I think he's a phenomenal wide receiver too, and we kind of saw that since I'm from Nashville. I've watched a ton of Titans games. He blossomed this year. With AJ Brown kind of taking over like lead roles. I guess I would love to have Corey Davis, and I think that saves a little bit of money for someone like Sheriff or KPL. Or Darby, like that difference in what Allen Robinson is going to want versus what Corey Davis wants. So that's kind of my philosophy on like, that you can get increased production at wide receiver without paying $18 million a year to Allen Robinson or whatever.
Yeah, I would love Allen Robinson. I think Allen Robinson is like the one top tier guy that I would pay. I think Chris Godwin would be solid, but I don't know. He has a little bit of an injury history, and I guess I'm not too concerned with the drops that he had in the playoffs, but I think Allen Robinson is worth the extra $2 million, and I don't know if Chris Godwin's worth whatever he's going to get. Kenny Galladay has a bunch of injury history, so I wouldn't mind him, but I would be a little bit concerned. And I think Corey Davis would be really solid. He was a top 5 pick. I think he was like the 4th overall pick a few years ago, had a really good year this past season, like 984 yards, and missed a few games as well. So he can be a really, really solid wide receiver too, with a lot of upside because he's really, really talented. So I would go after him. I like Curtis Samuel. I think someone else to monitor, Marvin Jones. Like at least I want to get someone that let's say if they play 14 plus games, they're at minimum getting 500, 600 plus yards, because this season we had no one besides Terry. We had no one that you could say this guy, no matter what, is going to get 500 plus yards. We had Cam Sims, Steven Sims, Kelvin Harmon before he got hurt, Isaiah Wright, and that's it. So I think we got to get at least a solid veteran, and we'll see about the draft. What are your thoughts on, would you be fine with taking a wide receiver at 19?
Yeah, I would. I think there's a lot of, talented wide receivers in the class. A bunch of mocks have like, Kadarius Toney or Rashad Bateman going around that range. I think those are, two of the primary wide receivers that kind of people are looking at. But what I will say is when you draft a wide receiver in the first round, there's an expectation that he's going to come in and be a Justin Jefferson or, someone like that has, immediate production of, close to 1,000 yards and maybe 5 or 6 touchdowns. Like, I think it really sets you up for failure sometimes, like we saw, over the previous years, like us with Josh Doxson, or I think Jalen Reagor was taken in the first round, over Justin Jefferson. Like all these people that draft wide receivers early, they expect you to be immediate, stars. And so, there's a lot of data that, support that day 2 wide receivers, have just as good of production as day 1 receivers. So I would kind of shy towards, that first round because there are other positions like linebacker or offensive tackle that you could kind of go in that first round. What about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you look at the top receivers in the NFL, I mean, sure, some of them, Julio, drafted really early, but a lot of the receivers are second round to later round guys. I mean, Michael Thomas, I think he's a second round guy. Stephon Diggs was a 5th round guy. Tyreek Hill was like a 4th or 5th round guy. Keenan Allen was a later round pick. Antonio Brown was like a 6th round pick. So, and obviously Terry, 3rd round pick. DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, 2nd round pick. So you can get these guys that are day 1, studs in the later rounds. I mean, obviously you're going to get a better hit rate in the first round, but also I think that let's go ahead and look at like left tackle. If you look at tackle, how many starters are you going to get in the 5th, 6th, 7th round? I was just talking about, really good wide receivers that have been drafted in the later rounds. There are so many just solid starters that you can get in the later rounds. That's very rare with left tackle and right tackle to get a guy in the 7th round that's a 10-year starter, but you can do that easily with wide receiver. I'm in the mindset if obviously if Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, if any of those guys somehow fall to us at 19, then I'll definitely take them because I think they're going to be elite. But if they're not there, then I much rather, let's say, linebacker, like you said, or maybe tackle, or obviously if there's a quarterback we like there, just because I think there's a lot of value in the later rounds for receivers, and I don't think there's great value for, tackles and some other positions in the later rounds. What are some other positions you like at 19 that you think we should address?
If Kyle Pitts makes it to 19, which I don't see happening, but a lot of people on Twitter do, I'd jump at that 100%.
Yeah.
Another thing, I think I've seen a couple mock drafts with Pat Freiermuth. I think that's how you say his last name. At tight end. I think I've seen a couple of those with him going in the first round or early second. Maybe like they trade back and do that. Cornerback is another thing I could see them doing if they let Darby walk. There's a lot of talented cornerbacks like Patrick Surtain and Caleb Farley, that have kind of been going in that 10 to 20 range in mock drafts. I love that you brought up that left tackle because that's something that I've kind of been debating with myself. Like, do I see Cornelius Lucas as an actual left tackle, for the next several years? Because I think he played pretty well this last year, and he's only 29. Um, but I, kind of where I'm at is, there in previous years, there's been so many positions that were glaring, like we suck at this position. We've got to attack this in the draft or in free agency. And apart from those, like wide receiver 2, linebacker type positions, there's a lot of positions on our team that are pretty good or mediocre that you have to debate with yourself. Do I actually spend the capital to like upgrade this? Is the difference between what I have now with Cornelius Lucas and a left tackle like Darisaw or, Rashawn Slater, like, is that gap bigger? I don't know. Yeah, definitely cornerback though at 19, and tight end, wide receiver, left tackle, all of those could be in play. I could see us drafting like 15 different guys, and I haven't really, been able to say that in years past. How about you?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because last year, I mean, we pretty much knew once we lost to the Giants that we were going to draft Chase Young, and this year, I mean, there's like 20, probably 25 different guys that we could draft at 19, or maybe if we trade back. So it's going to be interesting. I really, really like Jeremiah Uso-Koromoa. I think he would be a beast. I think if you do that, I think you can move Cole Holcomb to middle linebacker because Jeremiah Uso-Koromoa isn't really like a middle linebacker, but he's just such a beast. He can, rush the passer a little bit, which we don't really need, but it's good to have that versatility. Super good in coverage and solid in the run game as well. So I'd like him, like you said, Christian Darrisaw from Virginia Tech. I think linebacker, tackle would be solid, one of those two positions. I think also cornerback, like you said, Farley, Surtain, those guys are probably going to go a little bit earlier. Maybe J.C. Horn. I saw someone mention that earlier. So any of those positions, and then obviously somehow if one of the quarterbacks drops to us, I would like that as well. Someone asked us, Armin Brown, what's up? He said, would you guys be okay with pursuing Trent Williams? So what are your thoughts on that?
Hell yeah, I would. I would definitely, you know, I'd give Trent Williams a pretty decent amount of money to come back, but I don't know if he'd be willing to come back. I think the relationship may be fractured a little too much. But most of those guys that I think the relationship was fractured with are gone. So there could be a possibility that he comes back. And like I said, money always talks.
Yeah, and if you do that, I mean, obviously you're gonna have to pay a lot of money, but I mean, he's still one of the better left tackles in the game. Maybe you like, let's say a 3-year deal. Your offensive line is looking really nice because you got Morgan Moses at right tackle, Sheriff at right guard, at center you got Chase Roulier, and then you'll have Sadiq Charles or Wes Schweitzer at left guard. Both Schweitzer played really well last year, and I think Sadiq Charles also can be really, really good guard or tackle, and then you have Trent Williams. That's probably a top 10 or better offensive line, especially if they can stay healthy. And you also have a bunch of depth. I mean, Cornelius Lucas, you got Wes Schweitzer or Sadiq Charles. John Christian isn't great, but he's definitely a solid backup. You can have him play for a couple games and you're fine. So I'm really liking how the offensive line is looking. I Trent Williams would be fine. I'm also fine with bringing the same unit back. I think they played well and see what Cornelius Lucas or Sadiq Charles can do. What do you think? Like, where would you rather have Sadiq Charles? Do you think left tackle or left guard?
I'd probably rather keep him at left guard right now, just because, like I said, Cornelius Lucas is playing decent at left tackle, and I don't think with Sadiq's injury history like this year. I mean, it wasn't a terrible injury, but he didn't get as many snaps or playing time or practice time to really develop that left tackle position. I'd keep him at left guard right now and keep him in that rotation, and maybe give him some snaps like with the second team at left tackle until he could build up some stamina with that. And I would try him at left tackle. I really love what Wes Schweitzer, brought to left guard. Like completely blew me out of the water with his play. I mean, he wasn't amazing, but he was way better than what I thought he was going to be. And we have him on a little bit of a long-term deal. I think it's, 3 years that we have him at left guard. So I would want to develop Sadiq as a left tackle, but I don't know if he's going to be able to play left tackle this year. So maybe keep Cornelius Lucas this year at left tackle, and then maybe, let Sadiq develop until he can be a left tackle in 2022. That would be my best case scenario.
Yeah, and I think if you have, like, let's say, if you don't draft anybody or sign someone in free agency, then I think you start with the same unit and have Lucas and Sadiq battled out for that left tackle spot. I think that's the best case scenario if you don't bring anyone in. And I think the offensive line is looking pretty solid. So let's answer a few more questions in the chat. Someone said, if Zaven Collins and Christian Darrisaw is there at 19, who do you take? What do you think, Tyler?
I think Darrisaw is a great prospect. Like, he's a great, offensive tackle prospect. But I think for this team, I think Zaven Collins would probably be a better option at linebacker, just because it's a more immediate need. But I mean, if your approach is to take the best player available, you have to go with Darrisaw, because he's probably a plug and play, at left tackle right now, and he's young and he could kind of grow with this offense. But I'm going to switch it up. I don't know. I'm going with Darrisaw, because left tackle is more important than linebacker, and there's a variety of ways that we could get, a linebacker like we saw with KPL last year that can come in and have some production. Like you mentioned earlier, there's not many ways to get a productive tackle. So I'm going to go with Darrisaw.
Yeah, I think I agree. If you're taking at 19, I'm gonna go Darrisaw. If you can trade back and get some, more draft capital, then and you can get Zaven Collins at like 25, 27, that's perfect, because you get a good, linebacker that has some potential, played really good this year at Tulsa, and you can get some more draft capital to maybe, let's say, I don't have the draft board, up, like the draft points or whatever up, but let's say you get like a second and a third or something. Maybe you get like an extra second this year and an extra third next year. You're building up that draft capital that, if you like a quarterback next year in the draft, you're building up that capital. So maybe you can, if you really like someone next year, you can trade up for them. Maybe you don't win the division, and you're picking earlier, or even if you're picking later, you're going to have a much better chance to trade up. And that's a possibility. If we don't get our, franchise quarterback this year, then we might have to trade up. Let me read some more comments. Someone said Jabril Cox out of LSU would be good. I agree. Same with someone said Matt Milano. So let's switch over to quarterback. The biggest, everyone's talking about it. Like right now, it's not really, there's really no one intriguing on the market. I mean, Deshaun Watson probably not going to be available for a while, and if he is, we're probably not really in the position to get him. And then, Prescott is probably going to get re-signed, or a franchise tag. So what is your, what would you do, like, if you were the GM of the team, or Ron Rivera, I guess? Because
I mean, if I was the GM of the team, first of all, I would personally love to trade up in the draft if, someone like Justin Fields or Trey Lance drops, but I just don't see it happening. Like, there's so many QB needy teams. There are going to be so many moving parts. If Deshaun Watson gets traded, the Texans will be in need of a quarterback, and the Jets, what they do with Sam Darnold. Like, there's so many teams in that first, top 10 picks. I think it's going to be almost impossible to get one of those, main 4 quarterbacks to drop. And now Mac Jones is having a ton of hype around him. I mean, it could be possible, though. There's not been many drafts at all. I think like one draft ever where 4 quarterbacks have been taken in the top 10. I don't know about 5 quarterbacks. But I think because there are still so many holes, I think we need to wait it out one more year before we go all in on a rookie quarterback, like trading up or whatever. Like you said, maybe we don't win the division next year, especially if Dak is healthy. I think Darnold, I don't like Darnold that much, but I think he's going to be available. What I would personally do is I know people aren't going to like this, but I would probably sign Cam. But I don't know. Like you said, there's no appealing option right now, and that's what I'm scared about. Is it's almost March, and there's no real headway on what we're going to do at quarterback, and the options available aren't good, and they don't intrigue me. And the other option of trading up probably isn't going to happen either. So I don't really know what I would do. I don't know. What do you think?
So I don't like the idea of going after, unless you think they can play at an average or better level. I don't like the idea of going after someone like Andy Dalton or someone like that, because there's no really upside there. And if you're gonna do that, you might as well keep Kyle Allen or Taylor Heineke and let them battle it out for your starting job. I personally would try out someone that has upside, maybe Marcus Mariota. If you can get him for whatever it's going to take, like a 5th rounder, 7th rounder, maybe he gets cut. You're not really taking a risk. He can play for you for 1 year. If he balls out, great. He's your guy. If he doesn't, he's still, I think, capable of, let's say he plays average or below average, which below average is way better than what we got last year at the quarterback play. If he plays, in that 20 to 25 range, you can still win 8, 9 games and go ahead and get your franchise guy in the draft next year or in free agency the next year. And Darnold, I think it's going to be Darnold or it's going to be Mariota. Everyone is I feel like the people that are most plugged in, like John Kine is super plugged in, always gets everything right. He predicted, I think, Darnold to us, and I think he said Mariota as well would be another option. So I think those guys are really probably going to be the option. I don't like Darnold though. I'm gonna trust Ron Rivera and Scott Turner. If they get their guy, I think I'm gonna trust them. I'm gonna give them a year, see how it goes, because I think they can identify their guy. And if you can get Darnold for whatever 2nd round pick, I still don't like it, but he was in a terrible situation, so maybe you can bring it out of him and he can turn into your franchise guy. But not many options. Philip, thank you so much for the $5 donation. I gotta agree with him. All those quarterback needy teams are ahead of us and have more draft capital than we do this year. I think we roll with what we got. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you can't. I would say if you can get someone like Mariota or someone else for very cheap, whether it be cheap money wise or cheap, draft capital wise, you do that. If someone falls to you, then you can trade up. I don't think there's any prospects this year that you really want to trade up for that fit our team. I think Fields probably is the better one. I know a lot of people hate him because Ohio State, or it's not hate him, but are scared of him because of Ohio State. But I don't think trading up for Trey Lance is the best idea. I really like him as a prospect, but he doesn't fit this team because he's going to need minimum 1 year, I think, to sit behind someone. And that wastes a full year. And then his rookie year is really his 2nd year. And then by then, maybe Jonathan Allen or Deron Payne is gone. Maybe someone else is gone. So I think if Fields drops a bit, I would personally maybe trade up for him. But I mean, they're like Philip B said. I mean, a lot of the teams are ahead of us. I mean, you got obviously the Jets, the Jags. You got the Falcons that could go get a QB. The Panthers are 100% going to get a QB. The Eagles might get a QB. The Patriots are ahead of us. So there is so many quarterback needy teams drafting in the top 19 before us. So it's going to be hard to go. I mean, I don't think it's going to be 5 quarterbacks in the top 10 like, Kuiper and McShay are saying, but it definitely could happen. And we're not put in a great situation because do you really want to trade up from 19 to 9 to get Mac Jones? I don't think that's necessarily the best option. So what is your stance on trading up, and who would you be most inclined to trade up for?
Yeah, I would, like you said, because we're at 19. It's not like we're trying to trade up from 12 or anything like that. I think it's going to be really tough to trade up. You have obviously the Jaguars taking a quarterback. The Jets are probably going to take a quarterback. I don't think you can really pass on someone like Zach Wilson, even if you think is Zach Wilson going to be better than what Darnold is now by year 3? I think you go with it because you get that extra, couple years on a rookie deal. So I think they're going to take Zach Wilson. And then the Panthers are, blowing so much smoke about Deshaun Watson. It's going to be a long time before I think Deshaun Watson is traded, if he is traded at all. I really could see Deshaun having to sit out this full year. Like, the Texans seem to be on that kind of path where they're not digging in at all to say, they're going to get rid of Watson. And then I think that NFC South competition between the Falcons at 4 and the Panthers at like 7 is really going to heat things up because one of them is going to want Justin Fields. And I think it's going to be the Falcons. I think the Falcons could take Trey Lance because, like you said, he's, if he sits a full year behind Matt Ryan, who's going to be there this year probably because of the amount of money that they have in him, that could be an option. But then the other one is Justin Fields. I think there could be 4 quarterbacks taken in the top 7 or 8, definitely. And then someone like Mac Jones or Trey Lance, whichever one NFL teams like, least is going to probably drop until like 12 or so. But like you said, do I want to trade next year's first and maybe a second or third to get up and take the 4th or 5th best quarterback in the draft? I'm going to say no.
Yeah, and I think if you really, really like a guy, like, that's the thing. I think if you have a guy you really like and you think he can be your franchise quarterback and he's not named Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence, because those guys are going to go both definitely in the top 3, then I would be okay with trading up, but you have to make sure he's the guy, and maybe they don't have that guy this year, so probably not going to trade up, and it's probably going to be next year until we know who our quarterback is. I think, I love Heineke and Kyle Allen, but they're not our franchise guys. They could be, below average starters at best, probably going to be backups, and they both are probably perfect backups for us. But I just don't think there's really any intriguing options. So maybe go after Mariota. I would like Winston. I just don't think he's going to be available. But I don't want to bring in someone like Dalton just because I think Dalton's older and you kind of know what you're going to get out of him. Kyle Allen can, played okay last year. And I think, who knows what he can do with another season with this offense, like with this personnel. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on, Kyle Allen versus Taylor Heineke? Who would you rather start this season?
Before I answer that, I want to go out on a limb because I've been kind of thinking about it and just say I think the quarterback is going to be Mariota this year. I think he's going to be available, either by cut or by trade, and I think he gives that experience as someone that's been to the playoffs and he's mobile and he's a locker room guy. Like, me being in Nashville, like, everybody raved about how great of a leader Mariota was, how much of a hard worker he was. Like, it was just one of those things where he had some injury history and then, he didn't perform as well later on, which kind of let him leave the Titans. But I think it's going to be Mariota because Darnold, there's so much buzz already going around with him. I think the price is going to be driven up a little bit. Like, it's still going to probably be like a second, but do I want to spend a second and a third or a fourth to get Darnold? I don't. And, if you can come in and sign Mariota for what you're going to get from releasing someone like Alex Smith or whatever, then I think that allows you to keep all your draft picks. So I think Mariota is going to be the guy, maybe on like a 1-year deal. I think that makes the most sense for us to compete right now because you already know what he's got and he gives you the upside, and it's a good thing for our team. If they can't get anybody, I would rather start Taylor Heineke over Kyle Allen. I'm not, just because what I've seen from Taylor Heineke and Kyle Allen, what I saw from Taylor Heineke is better than what I saw from Kyle Allen. And I know people are complaining about the injuries and everything like that, but Taylor Heineke did a postseason interview after he got his deal, and they were just kind of asking him like, why have you been injured, after every game, and he basically chops it up to like, every time I step on the field, I don't know if it's my last snap ever. Like, I'm trying to go out and give it every single thing I've got, every single snap. That's why we saw him dive for the pylon in the playoff game and all those things. And playing like that leads to injuries, especially when you're a smaller guy. And he said, now that I've got this, long-term deal, I have some security to sit back and not have to play like that all the time. So, I think that kind of takes away some of the injury bug, question. And he was making throws at every single level, and he was on time, and he extended plays. And Kyle Allen did that same thing, but I liked the upside I saw out of Taylor Heineke, a little bit better than Kyle Allen. But I don't know.
Yeah, and it's just unfortunate. We only got to see what like a few, like two full games, right? The Cowboys game and one other game. I can't. The Giants. The Cowboys and the Giants were two full games from him. The Rams and the other Giants game, he got hurt, and he played solid. The first Giants game, he had 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, but he had that terrible fumble where they returned it for a touchdown. That was pretty much the reason we lost the game. I mean, you can go ahead and say the decision by Ron Rivera. But if Kyle Allen doesn't fumble that, we win that game. And then he had some solid games. I wouldn't mind either of them. I obviously rather have someone else from out of the building, but it. I mean, I think it's gonna be interesting. I think they're gonna battle it out in camp, and I mean they kind of both have injury history. So maybe whoever's healthy by the start of the season, it might be Heineke just because Kyle Allen is still recovering from that injury. So I think it's probably going to be Heineke. And yeah, like Kyle Allen, he has some upside, but I think Heineke, you've only seen really one game of him, and that one game was amazing. And, who knows? He's probably not going to be a good starting quarterback in the NFL, but you don't know. Like, you don't know. So having him or Heineke would be okay, for 1 year. But definitely after this year, we got to find someone else, whether it be in the draft or free agency. I don't really know what free agent quarterbacks there are this next season, but it's going to be interesting. Philip B said, I like the quarterback from UNC coming out next year. Yeah, there's some solid quarterbacks next year in the draft. Let me see. So we have this mock draft simulator up here. So let's go a little bit through, some picks, and we'll let the fans decide as well. So we're sitting here at 19. Darasaw's available. J.C. Horn's available. Rashad Bateman's available. Kwity Paye's available. Let's see. I think Mac Jones is available right here. But, I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. Like, some of their ratings are a little bit off, but so that's why if you see someone really good available, I might not draft them just because of the rating. So what do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I think if Darisaw is available, I think you got to go grab Darisaw because he gives you a plug and play at left tackle, to kind of develop, and he's young. And the offensive side of the ball is like something that we have to upgrade this offseason. It's no question. But I could also see someone like Rashad Bateman. He just ran the 4.37 and people were blowing up about him. So that's another one.
Yeah, I think I like Christian Darrisaw. J.C. Horn is solid. We kind of talked about the wide receivers. I wouldn't be like pissed if we drafted Rashad Bateman or another receiver. But I rather draft those guys in the second, third round. See if one of these first round talents drops to the second round. You're picking at 19. You can go ahead and get that guy. You have 2 third-round picks. So right here, I'll go tackle. J.C. Horn is intriguing. He's a really physical corner. There's some other guys as well. Let's see, Rashad Bateman, Jalen Mayfield. But I personally would go Christian Darrisaw. Let's see what people are saying in the chat. Someone said Bateman. Someone said Darrisaw. So wait for a few more people to decide. But I think Darrisaw would probably be the pick here, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, this is also another, possible trade back spot, get some more draft capital so that if we want to draft a quarterback next year in the draft and we want to trade up, then we can use the picks that we get. Another person said Darrisaw, someone said J.C. Horn. So I'm going to go ahead and take Darrisaw. I like Horn too, but let's go ahead and take Darrisaw. So yeah. What do you think what would be your, what position do you think is like the best value in like the second/third round? Like, what do you think we should address in those rounds?
I definitely think we should probably attack wide receiver in the second round, but that depends. Do we get Corey Davis because he's an outside receiver? So I wouldn't want to attack, a slot receiver or like a wide receiver 3 in the second round. But if we get someone like Curtis Samuel, who, primarily kind of plays in the slot, I mean, he can also go outside. Maybe you'd want to attack wide receiver here, like on the outside, or maybe we don't land one of the wide receivers. I think wide receiver would be good, or a linebacker would be really great here too. Or tight end, if Pat Fryermuth is still available. Those are kind of the three that I would be looking at.
Yeah, I think wide receiver is a solid option. Rondell Moore is available. I don't think he's going to be available here. So I'm probably not going to take him. He's probably going to be like a late first, early second guy, but who knows? Maybe he's available here. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a good option too. Elijah Moore, I know they have him rated low here, but he's a really good slot receiver. Like I think I saw someone, I think it's a reach, but they had us drafting him at 19. So yeah, I think a receiver here would be good. I like Amari Rogers as well as a slot receiver. Let's see what other positions. Brevin Jordan's the best tight end available. Let's go defense. See if there's any. Greg Newsome, cornerback available. I think they have Jabril Cox rated low here, but I think we could go and get Jabril Cox in the second round. Address that linebacker position, and he's more of an inside linebacker. So let's go ahead. Everyone in the chat, go ahead and say, would you rather get a linebacker or receiver? Someone said I would only get one wide receiver from free agency. Or no, I would only get wide receiver from free agency. We already have projects like Harmon and AGG. And I think, that is a solid point. Like if you get a solid guy in free agency like Curtis Samuel, or if you get Allen Robinson, then definitely. Like if you get Allen Robinson and you have Terry McLaurin, then it's not a big need to draft the receiver in the fourth round. But if you don't get another second round, if you don't get another big name, then I would probably draft a guy in the mid round. So a lot of people are saying linebacker. We got Rodriguez said linebacker. Tyler said linebacker. Lee said linebacker. Arthur said linebacker. A couple other people said tight end. So I think linebacker is probably the pick. And yeah, Philip B said I don't see Wilson or Fields sliding very far, so it's going to be hard to trade up from. I agree. So let's go ahead and take Jabril Cox. And one thing I forgot to mention, but I mean, what is your kind of reaction to the Alex Smith comments and the whole story there?
Yeah, so I kind of put some of my comments out there on Twitter, and some people didn't agree with me, but I understand why he would say that, because it kind of adds to his comeback story, how he kind of fought the odds, and he kind of had to work his way up the depth chart even on his own team to get back and play, and he made the playoffs, and 5-1 is all this starter and stuff like that. I personally didn't think it looked good for Washington, because he mentioned how they kind of tried to stronghold him into not playing, and they tried to put him on the PUP list, and he didn't want to, and kind of that back and forth between them, and it almost made it look like Washington was trying to stop him from playing. But then on the other side of it, they were talking about how Washington was trying to do that stuff almost out of concern or safety for Alex too. So I don't know. I think anybody could take it any certain way. What I do think it means is that Alex is probably going to be gone after this year. I think they already had questions about him this year, and then he played and he did great, but I think they're ready to move on and save that cap space that he's going to cost them if he plays this year, which I think is the most important thing I got from those comments. What about you?
Yeah, I think we already knew kind of that at the very least he was going to restructure the contract, but I think both sides have moved on. We'll get a $14 million cap saving. And I see both sides Alex Smith is a competitor. He wants to play, and he kind of got mad that they didn't want him to play, or I think they really were just concerned, like you said. I mean, think about it. The guy just came off probably one of the most horrific injuries in sports ever, one of them, and he's back. You didn't think he would be back. And especially Washington, imagine the backlash if we would have, let's say in that Rams game, uh, Aaron Donald jumps on his back, he breaks his leg. Like, imagine the backlash we would have gotten. Imagine the backlash we would have gotten as a franchise if we would have done that. And I think that's like was in their back of their mind, especially with the medical staff like history, like the couple years before that with Trent Williams. So I definitely see both sides. Just Alex Smith is a competitor, he wanted to play, but Washington also at the same time was a little bit nervous. And the thing is, they ended up giving him the chance. Like, they let him start. Like, that's where I was a little like surprised that he made those comments, because he was able to start a bunch of games and he ended up getting hurt, and that's why he wasn't able to play the last couple of games. But he still was able to play a bunch this season and made a huge contribution. He didn't play amazing, but he was a huge part in us going 5-1. So but it's a good comeback story. But I think, like you said, time to move on, and we're gonna get a big cap saving from him, $14 million.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep. So let's see. We're in the third round right here. We'll finish this mock draft and then answer a couple questions and then call it a stream. Again, huge thanks to Tyler. Make sure you guys check him out on Twitter. Link in the description. So let's see. Third round right here. Dylan Moses is available. We already took a linebacker, so cross that off the board. Eric Stokes, cornerback out of Georgia. Amari Rogers, slot receiver, Clemson. I think he's a beast. What do you guys think in the comments? And I don't know if anyone knows this, but is Eric Stokes, is he Eric Stokes, like our Eric Stokes' son or something? Like, I was just wondering that, because Eric Stokes, the guy in our front office, he played cornerback as well. So I've always wondered that. I couldn't find it out, but if anyone knows that in the comments, go ahead and put that in the chat. But yeah, cornerback would be good here. I think receiver. What do you think?
I think we'll try to target tight end, just to like that second, tight end position that, maybe gives you some like receiving versatility, that can kind of develop into somebody, but it just kind of depends on who's there. I don't see Brevin Jordan, making it to our pick at 74. Maybe I could be wrong, but I think he's definitely like a top 3 tight end. So Brevin Jordan, I think I've seen Hunter Long, a couple of times mocked to us in the third round. It kind of just depends on that, because tight end takes a while to kind of develop. So I don't know if you want to spend a third round pick on like a tight end too when Logan Thomas is there. But cornerback, I'm safety is another one. I've seen like someone like Andre Cisco. I don't know if he's there. Yeah, I've seen him to us in the third round. Some other things, I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I think safety would be a solid. I mean, there's a lot of different positions here that we could, upgrade or at least get some depth at. Brevin Jordan would be solid. I've seen a lot of different, like I've seen him go, I see him go as high as second, and then I've seen him go as low as fifth. So, somewhere in the middle, I guess, and we're right there, in the third round. So I think that would be a solid pick. Amari Rogers, I really like him this slot. So in the comments down below, what do you guys think? Someone said Amari Rogers. Someone said Brevin Jordan. Let's see.
Jordan was there. I'd probably take Brevin Jordan, just because I think he's a pretty good receiving tight end from what I've seen. That could be something that we're really looking for. Logan Thomas is really coming into his own, but like Jeremy Sprinkle and I don't even think Richard Rodgers is on the team anymore, but Jeremy Sprinkle, not really cutting it out in that receiving category. Amari Rogers is another one. A slot receiver could be, something that they attack right here, because slot receiver could give you some of that punt return, kick return type flexibility if they have that. But
yeah, so I think a couple of people in the chat said Brevin Jordan, Amari Rogers. So we'll go ahead and take Brevin Jordan. I think, tight end is definitely a big need, at least back, depth wise. I mean, if somehow, like if Logan Thomas gets hurt, you don't want to have whoever we have no one right now. I mean, Thaddeus Moss, who knows, but we got to get some depth, and Jeremy Sprinkle just ain't it. Let's see. Armin Brown, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Do you think we'll be able to get a decent free agent wide receiver if our quarterback situation stays the same way it is. Will we have to draft one? That's a really, really good question. I think we'll be able to. Just it might like I think we'll definitely be able to sign a solid option. But let's say like there's 15 guys we really like, or let's say 12 guys we really want to sign. Maybe 4 of those guys are eliminated just because of our quarterback situation. But let's say Curtis Samuel, he played with Kyle Allen and Taylor Heineke in Carolina. He's familiar with them and with Scott Turner and Ron Rivera. I think he would still be willing to come here. He's close with Terry. And I think a lot of these guys that are first time, free agents, they just want to get paid. And if we pay them, I think they will end up coming here. But I mean, like you said, that's a good point. There's going to be a few that probably stay away from us just because of the quarterback situation, especially like you said, if it stays the same. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's definitely some, wide receivers like Allen Robinson or probably Chris Godwin that are, if he hits free agency, they're going to shy away from our quarterback situation. There's no doubt about it. And even if we get someone like Mariota, I think it's still the same thing, because people have questions about Mariota. But I think Curtis Samuel or Corey Davis, I think one of them are going to be, on the team. I don't see Washington, who offered Amari Cooper like $22 million a year last year, and then going through this year and seeing, yes, wide receiver 2/wide receiver 1 is still a priority for our offense. I don't see how they miss this free agency without getting somebody at wide receiver, some of those like top 4 to 5 options. And like I mentioned before, with the salary cap, from the COVID hits, the salary cap is decreased. So there's only several teams that are going to be able to offer wide receivers like big contracts, or they're going to be willing to offer someone like Curtis Samuel $12 to $15 million a year, or Corey Davis, $10 to $15 million a year, for their style of play. So I think that kind of bodes well for us because we are like, top 5, I think, in salary cap space for this upcoming season. So I think we're going to get somebody like definitely in free agency.
Yeah, and like let's say we trade for Marcus Mariota. I know you said if we Armin, you said if it stays the same, our quarterback situation. But if we trade for Marcus Mariota, Corey Davis played with him for a couple years in Tennessee, and I think he would be like. I think they all really like Marcus Mariota and would love to play for him. So it might, some wide receivers might shy away from us, but I think some of the guys that just want to get paid and will have a lot of money, I think they'll come here. Again, appreciate the donation, man. So let's see. We're in our second, third round pick, I think. We ended up taking Brevin Jordan. So right here, nothing amazing on offense. You got Tylan Wallace, Oklahoma State, Dwayne Eskridge, Demetric Felton. Let's see, defense, Dylan Moses, Chaz Surratt. That would be a really, really good pick. I don't think he's going to be here, but if that happened, I would love that. But I think this is a good, position in the draft to address, wide receiver, linebacker if we hadn't done it already, maybe cornerback. I mean, we're really fortunate. We have 2 third-round picks, and who knows if we do trade back, if we get even more than that. So, what do you think here? What position?
I like. Didn't we go Jabril Cox in the second round? I think
Yeah.
I would be interested in doubling up though on linebacker because it's a position of our defense that is probably weakest, and we saw that in the run game and in the passing game, last year. Cole Holcomb is probably our best linebacker, and he's a 5th round pick from like 2 years ago. So I could see them restructuring that with, maybe John Bostic and KPL are great rotational pieces. Reuben Foster's probably gone. Yeah, I could see us completely redoing linebacker if Chaz Surratt gets there, or if he got, maybe we choose to take him at that earlier 3rd round pick and save tight end like Hunter Long or something like that for this pick. I'd be down with that too. I would like linebacker or safety.
Yeah, I mean, Surratt would be great. Hassan asked, what if we run into linebackers like say at 19, Zaven Collins and Jabril Cox? Which one would you take? I probably would take Zaven Collins But Jabril Cox, I think he's going to be, early second round. And if he falls to you at 19, then I would or not at 19, at the 19th pick in the second round, I would end up taking him. What's up, Reggie Reg? So yeah, I mean, I think receiver, linebacker, you go ahead and take it here. Either one of them is fine, depending on what we do in free agency. But
Are there any?
either one, and I'll just take someone random right here, and we'll go ahead and answer a few questions in the chat, and then we'll call it a day. So anyone who has any questions in the chat, go ahead and put them there, and then we'll call it a day. But yes, I mean, this offseason is going to be really, really interesting. We're going to get hopefully an answer at quarterback, whether it's, a 1-year thing or, if we trade up for someone. And one thing I forgot to mention, but, it's going to be interesting to see how the Dak Prescott situation, develops, because he has so much leverage. Like, it's insane how much leverage he has. And if I was him, I would say, if you tag me this year, I'm not coming back. Like, he has so much leverage. And, a lot of people are saying it's a done deal that he comes back. And I mean, I definitely think he's gonna come back. I just don't know if it's a done deal, just because he has so much leverage. And if they don't pay him this season, then there's just no way he comes back, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't getting him signed to a long-term deal is probably best case scenario for the Cowboys, because I think that would mean his cap hit, it would be lower than just the regular franchise tag. I could be mistaken, but I think the franchise tag counts entirely against your caps because it's a 1-year deal. So that that's almost 37 million against the cap. I don't know where they're going to find that from, because I think right now they're projected to have like 20 or 30 maybe. If they sign him to a long-term deal, maybe they can lower that cap number by messing with the numbers. But I think Jerry Jones doesn't want to pay him, $38-40 million. And I think it's a tug of war between egos at this point. But like you said, Dak has the leverage. That's exactly what I would say to them too. Like, if you tag me, I'm not coming back next year. And probably I would say, if you tag me, I'm going to Washington next year. So you better sign me to a long-term deal.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, he can, like, imagine, I think, if he says, Washington's calling me and offering me this much, Jerry Jones like, no way, I'm giving you 40-something million dollars a year. Someone asked, what position should we target in the first round? So we talked about this earlier, but I mean, we kind of talked about linebacker and tackle would be good. Wide receiver, I think it would be okay at 19, but or at least I would rather wait for that in the second or third round. But linebacker, tackle, obviously quarterback, if someone falls, I would like that. Anything I missed right there?
No, you hit it right in the head.
Yeah, so that's what I would do in the first round. Let's see, any other questions? Asan said, do you think we cut Peyton Barber and draft a running back in the late round, or just stay with Barber? So yeah, I mean, that's another good question. I think they're gonna keep Barber. I don't think they're gonna cut him, and if they do, it's gonna be like right before 53-man roster cuts, like right before the season starts. I think that's what they'll do, and I definitely I'm a fan of drafting a running back in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, because every year there's just so many steals in the later rounds. Philip Lindsay a couple years ago was undrafted, made the Pro Bowl in his rookie year. James Robinson, undrafted this past year, one of the best running backs. So you can easily hit on a guy later. Like, it's a position that you can easily get late round steals. So if you can get someone in the 5th, 6th round, I would definitely go ahead and do that, especially with Bryce Love, who I think he's probably done. Like, I honestly, maybe, like, I think they're going to let him come into training camp. And, if he doesn't look like close to what he did in Stanford, then I think they might move on from him. What's up, Town Ho? And yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would love to take a running back. I think that's, like I said, a position of need. When Gibson went down, we saw how it affected our offense. And I love McKissick, but I don't want to subject his body to those in between the tackle carries, 10 to 15 carries a game when Gibson is out. So I liked Peyton Barber too, but I think we could do an upgraded RB2 in the draft in those late rounds. I think Peyton Barber is probably, if they keep 3 running backs, will be cut, but they may keep 4 running backs, to keep Barber around.
Yeah, yeah. Someone said, why are you guys giving up on Bryce Love?" I'm not necessarily like giving up on him. It's just like I've heard like a lot of people, like JP Finley said he might like just be done in the NFL. Like he stayed in Stanford his like 4 years, and I think he said like after he's done he wants to be a doctor, and like he might not necessarily like he might move on from football. And he just, I think was such a beast in college, and it's unfortunate what happened to him. And if he does get back to his close to what he was in Stanford, I mean it's the same situation as Reuben Foster, but if he can get back to that, then of course that would be the perfect scenario, him, Gibson, and McKissick. But I don't think that's going to happen. That's just my thoughts right there.
Yeah, JP Finley came out with the article, I think it was last year during training camp, and he basically insinuated like that JP thinks Bryce Love's career is done. With his
Yeah.
injury and how he looked, and probably the way that they were talking about him, with personnel people, like he just didn't look the same. And last year's training camp marked, like, I think it had been 24 months or something like that, 18 months, 21 months since his actual ACL injury, and he still hadn't recovered fully because I think if you remember back, he had some other minor surgeries like in January or whatever to fix some stuff up. If he's not ready to go by this training camp, almost 2.5 years removed from his ACL, he's done. Like, at least on this team, if he can't make the roster as a 4th running back, I think his career could be over. And like you said, he has outside interests that he's perfectly fine with going after. So
Yeah, it's unfortunate with him. I mean, who knows? He could definitely, you know, turn it around. And it's just in terms of him, it's just his health. I mean, that's just what it is with him. Him and Reuben Foster. But you know, we'll see what we do with those guys. Someone said if Bryce Love is not healthy next season, he is done. One more question someone was asking, or I heard it a bunch in this chat about Ryan Fitzpatrick. Would you be okay with him?
yeah, everybody kind of debates like which Ryan Fitzpatrick are you gonna get? Are you gonna get Fitz Magic or are you gonna get Fitz Tragic? And I think he'd be a perfect stopgap type quarterback for a year because he's gonna make plays, he's gonna keep you in games, and he's a gunslinger too. Like he'll put up 35 points on the defense easy, because he's just so cerebral and smart with that. But there's going to be games where he throws 3 or 4 interceptions and you get blown out by 25 plus because your quarterback play was so bad. But, if he comes here and is willing to take like 10, $15 million to be a 1-year quarterback, I would take it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, he's super old, but he had a really good year this past year in Miami. For the, time he played, he was really solid. So I'll be fine with him. And, at least with him, even though he's old, he has some upside. Wouldn't be my preferred option, but if you strike out on everyone else, that's what I mean. I would be okay with it. I'd rather have Fitzpatrick than Dalton. That's definitely for me. I rather have Fitzpatrick. And guys, again, appreciate all you guys for coming in the chat. Make sure you guys go follow Tyler on Twitter. I'm putting it in the chat. Appreciate all you guys for coming through. And again, Tyler, thank you so much for coming in and coming on the live stream.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Pedro. I love your channel and I love your Twitter. You have some really great takes, and just excited to keep growing this, WFT Twitter thing. So appreciate it all, y'all, and hope to see you on my page.
Yep. Appreciate you guys and peace.